I'm glad you're here. We have a lot of ground to cover. Many of the people that wrote me over the past, say, year, we're talking about the new rifles that have come out that some people call budget rifles, and I guess maybe that's the correct term to use because they're not that expensive. So I made a list of the things that you sent me, and people wanted me to talk about the Remington 783, and we've done that, and the Howa 1500, I think it is, and the Weatherby Vanguard, which is the same rifle. The Howa Mini, I think we've looked at that. The Winchester XPS, the Ruger American, Savage Access, Thompson Center Venture and Compass. I don't have those today, sorry. The Winchester XPR. I had a chance to handle one and shoot one. I can comment on that if I remember. And the Mossberg Patriot. But what I did is, I think in fairness to all of them, because they have certain similarities, and you'll see what I mean in a few minutes. And you'll have to bear with me. We got a whole bunch of things to cover, and I don't have endless time, but I'll do my best. And so what I did is I took them all apart, as some of you suggested, because I guess the kind of autopsy is how you find out what's what. I received 2 messages about the Mossberg Patriot, since I made a video on the Mossberg Patriot, and that was at your request. The people had taken them down for cleaning, and then I guess something fell on the rifle, or the rifle fell down. I have a volume of stuff to read, so I can't remember everything. And they couldn't get the bolt in. So I had not taken apart the Patriot, but maybe we'll start there. But on the table, before I lose myself, here's the Ruger American. This is the Mossberg Patriot. I'll get rid of this paper. I had to have paper to remember. Mossberg Patriot, Remington 783, and the Savage Access. And I also have here I ran out of room. This is the Weatherby Vanguard, which is the same as the Howa. This has been around a long time. And then the Tikka T3, and this is just a bolt handle, tactical bolt handle or whatever. But I'm not sure this really falls into the discount category, but some people think it does, so I have it here. And hopefully I'll remember to comment on that. But let's get right into the guns, starting with the Mossberg Patriot. So this might be of interest to you, or maybe not. I did send an email to Mossberg. Usually I don't hear back from these people, and that's fine. But at least I wrote. So what's happening is, I guess everybody likes taking their guns apart. I was quite shocked. So the bolt sits in here. Everything's normal. It's a 2-lug bolt. It's got some really nice spiral fluting here, as you can see. And it's got a removable bolt head held by that pin. I should have taken the scope off. So the bolt is an assembly of parts, which is fine. That's common these days. But this side of the receiver really shouldn't be called part of the, it is part of the receiver. This is so thin. This is much thinner than this pencil, and it's flat at the bottom and it's milled out. So it had to be there to hold the bolt up. But what's happening is people are taking these rifles apart. And I mean, I actually dropped a rifle just getting this video ready. And if this hits something like the side of a desk, it gets dented or breaks, according to the people that messaged me. And they said it didn't break, it kind of cracked. And then they dented it back in place, but then the bolt got stuck. Because even well, you know how it works when you straighten metal, you get kind of a bobble in the metal because it never returns quite to the way it was. So I thought I'd mention that right away, which is too bad, because the Patriot actually really impressed me when I first looked at it. And it still impresses me, but I guess the message is just don't take it apart, because this is, I don't want to say paper thin because that's an exaggeration, but like I said, not many things surprise me, but that is way too thin for a crucial part. If this gets deformed or broken, that's the end. Other than that, it has a very good recoil lug. The action is good, the bolt is good, everything runs the way it should. Spiral fluting is cool, trigger's fine, price is good. Accuracy is excellent. You can read about it on, other YouTube channels. And the barrel is head-spaced using the original. It's not really a Savage method, but it was the Savage 110, I think, that popularized that. And part of the accuracy is due to the way the bolt head works, and you can read all about that. So that's the Mossberg Patriot. And the magazine, I think that's the Mossberg. I had to keep track of the parts. So it's kind of a hybrid, polymer and sheet metal. It works fine. And we're going to look at the stocks on their own. So I'll just go back to the actions. Here's that Savage Axis that a lot of people bought. And from your messages I learned just the amazing loyalty to Savage people have. I'm sure the company knows. The Axis sometimes sells for just amazingly low prices, and essentially what it is a really cheapened version of the 110. And the 110 was already remarkably well designed for cheap manufacture. And cheap kind of has a derogatory aspect to it, that word, but I don't mean anything derogatory. There's a cleverness to the Savage, and it's all in the Axis. Do I really like this rifle? I mean, the bolt handle is sort of in the air here, the trigger's in the air. It works because the engineers and accountants figured out how to get it all to work, and they're very accurate. But I'd just pay a couple $100 more and buy a 110 or any of the other models. I think the Axis just went too far, but again, that's just me. And I talked about this before, including the bolt handle and some of the other ways they've done things. And also you'll notice no recoil lug. The recoil lug is in the stock. We'll look at that in a minute. So that's the Savage Axis, and I guess I should do the same for every gun if I remember. That's the Mossberg magazine. See, I told you I'd get the parts mixed up. And that means that the Savage must be over here. So that's the Remington. So that's the, well, it doesn't matter. They're all about the same. Anyway, these are all polymer and sheet metal hybrids. Some kind of staining happening there. But I tried, I had to take them all apart, so I had to try the releasing the magazine and putting it back in, and they're all pretty smooth. They're not hard to do. Then the Remington 783, this one kind of, I would have to say, is like well proven. This is all established, like modern gun making. This is not too thin. Everything is the way it should be, which is what you would expect. And people write me about how accurate the 783 is. And actually there are people that just love the 783, so it's hard to say anything bad about them. But there are lots of people that love the Axis as well. This has the recoil lug. This has the modern way of setting headspace. The new model with the heavy barrel, they got rid of this unusual flat bolt handle that a lot of people objected to or told me they objected to. So that's the Axis, the 783. I'll get the magazines right. That's the Remington. It's another version of the sheet metal and polymer. And the Mossberg we talked about, and then the Ruger American. And yeah, so the Ruger American, that's a cool rifle. We've talked about these before. It's the only one that has 3 lugs instead of 2. Now I'm not including the ones that aren't on the table. I don't know about those. I don't know what the Thompson Center has. But that gives you the low bolt lift. And they put twin cams in the bolt, so it's not hard to lift this bolt. As you know, if you don't have like a high bolt lift, that means that there's a lot of pressure. So they put twin cams to make it easier to lift. And the 3 lugs are nice, the bolt runs smooth. and it doesn't have the recoil lug because that's in the stock, which we'll look at in a minute. So we've got two rifles, the Ruger American and the Savage Axis, that don't have recoil lugs, and we've got two that do. The Ruger people went for an entirely polymer magazine, but this is in the Bushmaster round, and it works and feeds perfectly. But if you don't like all polymer magazines, then maybe don't get this rifle. And I have one of these Americans in 308, and it has that rotary magazine, which looks even cheaper than this one, but they all work. So it's yeah, it's one of those things. And I probably should look at this magazine. This is the Mossberg, as you can see. I probably scrambled these, but you'll be quick to sort out what I can't while I'm filming. And this is all polymer as well. So anyway, they wouldn't put them on the market if they didn't feed and work, at least for a period of time. Then we get to the stock. So this was an adventure, taking these apart, because I would remove something and then pieces would fall off. And this is the Axis stock. So this is getting pretty thin to me, but again, between the engineers and the accountants, they've got this kind of piece here that fits in here, the trigger guard assembly. So I'm sure this piece, when it's attached here, makes this whole contraption more rigid and stronger. And I'm going to put them all side by side in a minute. And then here we have the 783, and the recoil lug goes in there. And we've got some aluminum bushings. Some people would say this is pillar bedding. Some people wrote me about that, and I don't know, I've never really understood that whole concept, but I'm sure it's smarter than I am. Here's the Mossberg. I'm just going through these one by one, in fairness to each manufacturer. And the Mossberg was kind of nice. I took it apart, but then, not that it's a bad thing, but then this piece fell out. This kind of sits in here, which, you know, it's all money, right? So yeah, this kind of fell out, and some screws, well, the ones I had undone. Oh, I forgot, this piece fell out of the 783. That's the trigger guard. So, I mean, I don't know about this styling, but it's there. And I guess the trigger guard can fall off a Mauser too with the floor plate. And then here's the American. They must have had clever injection molding people, because they got twin recoil lugs, aluminum ones, in the stock, and then they got the trigger guard as one piece. So it's a one-piece assembly. And now what I'll do is just get up and I'll put these all together, because then you can see, it's kind of a learning thing. You can see how clever these people are. And I never want to make it sound like they haven't all tried. But this is the Ruger American. We just talked about these recoil lugs. So the action is sitting and supported here and here. And I actually touched these up with whiteout to see if the action bears against all these supports. And I was surprised. It does. So that's quite a rigid stock. And we've got some cross-hatching, or whatever you call that, here. And then we have, I guess this is the Mossberg, and I'll set this one down. So nothing notable here. This probably adds some rigidity, and there's a bit of a spring in here which you won't be able to see, but that's part of the mechanism that holds the magazine. And then we have the Remington here, and that one has the clever removable trigger guard. And then we have the Axis with this thing that goes here. I guess you'd call it the trigger guard also. And they all come together fairly easily. I didn't have to use a single conventional slot screwdriver for any of these. They're all different sizes of Allen keys. And taking the guns, the actions out of the stock was no issue at all. And it's quite a challenge for the camera people. And then we can look just quickly at the trigger assemblies. So there you have the Ruger American with a typical Tang safety. This is a very crisp, sharp trigger. You can see the action as a typical length, and the bolt handle locks into the steel of the action. The Mossberg is the same. And again, this was started by Savage, and some people call them Glock rifle triggers, and you can understand why they say that correctly or incorrectly. And then the Remington with the very small loading and ejection port, compared to the Mossberg and the Ruger, it's notably small. And then the Axis. This, like I've said a few times, this is just floating in the air. This bolt handle would have been, and the trigger is just hanging here in the air because they ended the receiver here. And that would be an accounting exercise. This inch of steel over, 500,000 guns or whatever they make is a difference. I don't want to say in conclusion, because I don't really have a conclusion about these 4 rifles, other than that from my experience with them and from what I've observed here on these autopsies, the one that probably is the most thought out, that's probably the best way to put it, is the Ruger American. And I have 2 or 3 of them, and they're excellent. That does not mean that these other rifles won't work. The only one that I've heard from directly, like firsthand problem, is the Mossberg. There was something going on with the Winchester product, but you can write me what the problem was. I don't know. Maybe there was a recall, but maybe not. And then getting back to the real world, people have purchased train loads of these Tikas, and from Finland, and they seem to be invincible. But people ask me for my opinion. I hope it's worth asking me. And I think that the Howa, overall, if you look at the price, you can get these Howas or the Weatherby Vanguard at a very reasonable price. They've made them forever. I should have taken this apart, but you can see I've run out of room. Maybe if you want me to, I can. But the stock design, the action design, the integrity of the action, the way everything runs on the Vanguard Howa product is sort of excellent. It's a citizen above suspicion. And I still like the floor plate, just because getting these magazines out means you have to get them back in. So every one of these has what I would call functional but questionable systems that to me will ultimately fail. That doesn't mean guns shouldn't fail, because then we have to buy new ones. That's a good thing. But maybe when they fail makes a difference. Anyhow, for all the requests and comments, I hope this is useful to you. And you can go and examine these rifles here. I don't work for any of these people, and I try to be objective. I probably miss things and probably, don't do things perfectly. But I try to offer you what I've learned. And and some of you write that you bought walnut stocks for the 783 or for another rifle. That's great. They not only look better, they're individualized, because no piece of wood is the same as any other piece of wood. You throw some of these on the table, and even I can't tell them apart. I call them the black rifles, even though they're not really black rifles, but you know what I mean. And probably that's about it. The scope mounting system, some people write me long essays about them. That's great. It's interesting. One way or another, there's always a way to get a scope mounted and bases on that suit your needs and that you like. So I won't go into that. I hope that covers what I wanted to cover. Thanks for your patience with this video, and I'll just keep going, and send me your comments, and hopefully I'll be able to address them. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, and your suggestions are always welcome for new videos. And if you can join me on Patreon for $3, that'd be great. Thanks again. Take care. All the best.